The Winnipeg Jets thrashed the Coyotes. Intro over.
You're Locked On Coyotes, your daily podcast on the Arizona Coyotes, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome, everyone, to today's episode of the Locked On Coyotes podcast, your number one daily podcast on the Arizona Coyotes. We're part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Today's episode brought to you by Game Time. Today's episode is just download the Game Time app, create an account, use the promo code LOCKEDONNHL for $20 off your first purchase. I'm your host, Robyn and Matt, alongside Matthew Jacobson. We want to thank everyone for making the show your first listen every day. We're free and available everywhere you get your podcast. Matthew, the Arizona Coyotes on Saturday, they lost to the Jets. I mean, they lost to the Jets. What else can I say?
The real Jets lost to the fake Jets, and I'm just sad. I'm not sad. I'm actually quite angry. In many different regards. First and foremost, let's make this about me. Every single time I have anything to do with this team, they delete a lead at home and just collapse. And I'm like, how am I supposed to have fun at FanFest, or how am I supposed to attend practices when I have that fresh in my mind? But I also have some very detailed concerns that while this is growing pains, the season's not over. I again never said they were going to be a playoff team this year. It's just like I'm frustrated that one of the first attempts, one of the first opportunities they had to beat a team that they are statistically better than, but is still a good team, they can't hold on to a lead. And one thing that really stuck out to me as I was listening to the game, going hither and thither, so I listened to make sure I can at least get as much context as possible, is I think it was Bob Hehouse, Lindsey Fry, said that Winnipeg was making this giant push in the second, and when Liam O'Brien scores a goal, the Coyotes needed that because the Jets were taking over the game, and they took over the game anyway. And that's what made my blood boil, because speaking with people after the LA Kings loss, this team needs to learn how to play with a lead. And it comes down to inexperience. It comes down to leadership in the locker room. You're going to have to get used to stuff like this. And I'm also going to not pulling a Rick talking on you guys, but we're also going to have to talk about Coach Andre Tournier and what the response is going to be to stuff like this, because this is a very crucial moment, very crucial season for this team's development. So on the coaching aspect, if you want to prove that is the coach that will lead this team to the Stanley Cup, this is one of the first major hurdles.
I mean, that's the important part about having a coach that's meant for a team that's youthful, is kind of focusing on, like, all right, this happened. Let's go back to the drawing board and kind of like take a look at film. Let's focus on everyone's development and make sure that we're all on the right page. I think that is what is super crucial to having a coach like Andre Tournier, rather than a coach like before, like with Rick Tocchet, who kind of would like, yo, this is not working. We'll just change whatever we'll just completely change what's going on, and then we'll get physical, or we'll do something else, and it just looks crazy out there.
I think it was said on Reddit of all places, but I could be getting this confused. I engage with and consume a lot of Coyotes-related content on many different sites, literally every day. But they haven't been registering as many hits in the last handful of games. And as it feels like they are transitioning a little more to a skill-based game rather than the hard-nosed style they had last year, you still have to make sure you're not developing bad habits. And losing 2 games at home, and realistically speaking, if we look at that Montreal game, you said it very well in one of the last episodes, is that was a very sloppy win. They kind of got lucky, isn't the right word to use, obviously, but they kind of got away with one there. And when you're now coming off of, they had that first win at home, and then you get a collapsed lead, a sloppy game they manage to grind out, and then another collapsed lead, we have to start talking about the structure of the team just a little bit, and if this is going to be a negative trend, because you don't want to start forming negative trends when this team is really trying to come into its own and develop for those future seasons.
Yeah, and I think that's kind of an important thing too, is not being afraid to shake up the lines when you really need to. I think sometimes that make a difference, right? Even if it might not be long term, right? Like it doesn't have to be that way, but sometimes that's just what you need to do. So maybe that's the kind of message they need. But if they have those games in which it's kind of trending in that way, it does leave concern, especially if they're home games, right? We're supposed to be talking about the mullet magic, and for the most part, we see some crazy stuff happen to mullet, some awesome stuff. But if they want to make sure that stays and that remains true, they got to kind of work on themselves, and they got to make sure they take care. They got to take care of some fundamentals that they've been making mistakes on.
Yeah, and first and foremost, learning to play with a lead. First and foremost, because that is something that. And here's the thing: last year, we never really talked about it. And I know I didn't join the show until the offseason, but I have never really considered in the last couple of years of this rebuild, I have never once crossed my mind how this team's going to play with a lead, because they had that certain kind of play style where they were always tough to play against. It just never really came across like it would be an issue. Now that we're at this point, when they actually are getting ahead in games, they are scoring first a decent percentage of the time, they are getting up to early leads, they have to learn to adjust. And one thing I do like is that Tournier wasn't afraid to, let's say, when the chemistry wasn't the same as last year, he broke up the Kraus line, the Kraus, Bocelli, Bukestad line, tried to spread it around a little bit, reunited them, and then immediately started clicking again. So he's showing he is willing to change it up a little bit just to try to get a different feel. But we'll have to talk a little bit about just the drive, the gas, the engine, the motor, whatever word I am trying to look for. We gotta talk about that. So after the break coming up, I'll give a quick summary of the game, and we'll get right back into the meat and potatoes, if you will.
Well, today's episode is brought to you by Game Time. Have you ever been frustrated trying to buy tickets only to realize that, hey, these last minute tickets, the price goes significantly up than what you thought it was because you got these, because the deals aren't great, or you get surprised by these crazy fees. Plus, when you get at the event, the ticket is nowhere what you expected the view might look like. Game Time is something that absolutely fixes everything for that. It's the best and easiest way to buy tickets for sports, music, comedy, theater events, and absolutely everything, with killer last minute deals, all in prices, huge from your seat, and their best price guarantee. Game Time takes the guesswork out of buying tickets. I know I've used Game Time more times than I could count, buying Diamondbacks tickets whenever the San Francisco Giants are in town. I love those games. I'll go to spring training. I've used it for football games. I've used it for hockey games. The reason why I'm so loyal to these guys is because I get the best deals from them. I know exactly what I'm paying for, and I can see where I'm sitting before I purchase the tickets. They have the lowest price guarantee, event cancellation protection, and job loss protection. So take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, use the code LOCKEDONNHL for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account, redeem code LOCKEDONNHL, LOCKEDONNHL for $20 off. Download Game Time today. Last minute tickets, lowest price guaranteed. Well, Matthew, let's keep talking about this. I want to talk about Jason Zucker in a little bit too, but let's finish the thought process about these last couple of games, especially the loss against the Jets, because based off what we're seeing from the Coyotes, something needs to there's got to be something needs to happen to turn around in terms of make sure that they get back to the competitive, because they had some really good games to start off with, other than the away games they had in New York. But
it's just, to me, it's as simple as learning to play with a lead, and whatever the motor is, whatever is stopping them from having the foot on the pedal for, and cliche, playing a full 60. Whatever is stopping them from playing a full 60 needs to get addressed. But real quick, here's the scoring summary so we have it on record. So Yanis Moser, his second goal of the season from Michelli and Krause at 5:31 of the first period. It's a 1-0 lead heading into the second period, with the Coyotes out shooting Winnipeg 8-3. At the point where Winnipeg scores their first goal in the second, I think that they close that gap and the shots are 8-all. But Liam O'Brien, his second from Jackery McBain at 5:49 of the second period, 2-0. And it felt like immediately, but it's about a minute and a half later, Nino Niederreiter tips it in, his third from Appleton and Morrissey at 7:31. It's 2-1. Then Dylan scores his first of the season at 10:05. We're tied. Lawson Krause in the power play, at the very least, gets the lead right back for the Coyotes. It felt like temporarily stopping the dam from bursting. Like I said, when O'Brien scores that goal, it is mentioned on the radio broadcast by Bob Hehouse that this team desperately needed that because the Jets were making that push. The Jets were controlling the pace of play. They were controlling the game in the second period. And immediately after getting back-to-back goals to tie the game, that Krause is fourth of the season on the power play from Nick Bukestad at 14:47. That was needed. Before Nino Niederreiter answers back with his second goal of the night, fourth of the season from Ehlers and Pionk at 17:01. Also on the power play, it is 3-3 heading into the third period, and the only two goals going to Dylan, his second of the night, and Niederreiter. Do you believe that's a hat trick for him. 5-3 finish, and shots in the second were 15-9. They were more even in the third. It was 9-8 in favor of the Jets, 27-25 total, but 15-9. It stands out because the Jets, they controlled the pace 100%. They need a lot of credit because this is the game that they probably needed. The Jets they replaced the Coyotes as third place in the division. And especially with a couple of the decisions they made in the offseason to try to forego a rebuild, you kind of need to win when you're a team that's trying to win. So they went out there, they got it done, full credit to them. Now let's switch focus to the Coyotes and how come they've had multiple collapses at home. Like, yeah, the 6-3 loss in LA sucked, but it happens. It is what it is. When you're leading 4-1 at home, you need to win that game. When you're up 2-0 in the second period, it can't be a desperate attempt to stop the opposing team from overtaking you just for them to overtake you a couple of minutes later. It's something in that regard needs to change, and I don't know if it's leadership, if it's the coaching in terms of the direction, if it's the coaching in terms of accountability, if it's just a cold streak, if it's just the team is having some issues playing the full 60 and they'll work through it. I'm still trying to figure out what the actual issue is. So that's why I have to look at the leadership and the coaching, because that's the first people you have to turn to when there are issues like this.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that's the most important thing, that you'll probably, even though we can't see exactly what's going on in the locker room, you have to wonder, what all the alternate captains are doing at this point. What is Keller and Krause and everyone else saying, right? What are they saying in the locker room? What are they gonna do to say? Because that's the role of captaincy. That's one of the biggest roles of captaincy. Like, to, especially if something's not going their way. That's happened before, right? When these captains call like players only meetings, whatever. It's like, all right, something's wrong. We need to figure out what's going on. I'm not saying they should do it at this point, but what I'm saying is they should at least, that you would hope that you would see something out of them. There's something, there's the spark coming out of them to kind of start.
Yeah, and look, the Coyotes are 5-5-1. They're technically tied for the second wild card spot with St. Louis. All right, it's not like this is a team that isn't functioning, but it's just
It's
we're
not like we're the
talking
San
about,
Jose
like,
Sharks.
yeah, we're not San Jose, but like I mentioned earlier, is when you're at these critical moments where a team is developing, these are the times when you don't want to see those negative trends start to form. And we've had 3 subpar efforts at home in a row. 3 tends to make a trend, so we need to ask the questions here. And when it comes to the captains, maybe this is one of those downfalls of only having A's in the room. Now, obviously, I am not in that locker room. Well, I mean, I'm technically in the locker room more than the rest of y'all, but not in that context. But I'm not in the locker room. I can't tell you, like, this is what Keller does. That's what Schmaltzy does and says. But what I can tell you is when you have anything by committee, it can work fine enough to a point. You need that strong centralized leadership. You need the one person to look at and in the locker room and, hey, this isn't going wrong. This is going wrong. This person has to have the answers. This person has to have kind of the direction the team needs to go in. And that's kind of where it does suck to not have that C in the locker room. Now, obviously, again, you also got to look at Turnier to see what is his messaging right now, what is the direction right now from his standpoint. But obviously, right now, something is not working. Something
Right.
is not working to get this team to play a full 60.
And when it comes to that, you make a good point. I think at that point, it comes down to, is there a player who is going to pseudo assume that C role? And I think that will, like, in that kind of sense, that will also set the precedent of who will actually have a better chance of earning the C patch in reality come hopefully maybe next season, right? Like at this point, it's like a tryout for the C.
Yeah, and I know Schmaltzy, Keller, and Kraus wear A's. There are a couple of the players that wear them. So, and just to give an example, I am just going to, for an example, say this is what X person could be saying that is not what they actually are saying. So, let's say Krauser is more angry about the lack of motor, and he's said in the messaging that's a little more tough and firm. Let's say Keller is more reserved, and he's kind of just trying to show by example, more of a Teppo Numanen style. Let's say he is just trying to go out there and play his game and show this is the way to do it. And let's say Schmaltzy is kind of somewhere in between, or maybe he has a completely different thing. Hey, it's just about shots or something. It's just some random claim. That's one of the problems that can happen when you have only alternate captains is where's the locker room going to lean? Where's the messaging coming from? So that is just an example of trying to convey the point we're trying to get to here. And
that's what I'm saying, is one player's got to step up, right? And actually make the full step up. I've seen cases where a team does not have a captain and it's all alternates. At one point, one alternate's just had enough and they just go and make the step up and just speak from the heart to the entire locker room. That happens. Let's say, with the next off season later, that player was named captain of that team. Like it was no doubt. Like it was an easy decision based off what we knew.
You know who's the only guy I could see doing that? And again, no one is in my ear. I am not in the locker room. I am just going based off of like personalities that I can tell from an outside perspective. The only person that I can honestly see doing that is Lawson Krause. Like when a lot of people talk about Krause's biggest like positive aspects and positive qualities, that is one of the first things that shoots out to me that Krauser might be that kind of guy. 100%.
That's why when we were doing that, the case for captaincy episode a while back, that when I brought up Krauser, like some people were were even asking like why, because like Keller is like the best player, he's got all these aspects, and I'm like, but can he command a locker room like I think Lawson Krause could? Like, I think that's what, like, I'm with you. I'm 100% with you on that.
He has that. Again, from an outsider, he seems to have that more boisterous personality. He seems to be one of the bigger personalities. I can kind of, if you were to tell me after that loss, somebody was yelling at the guys in the locker room. And you said it was Krause, or you told me it was Keller, for example, because I've only ever seen him being more reserved. I would probably not believe you if you said Keller. I wouldn't even ask a second question if you said Krause. And that's
You're
just
like,
from outside
right.
observations. Yeah, I'd be like,
no,
not surprised. Because
exactly.
like Keller feels like a guy that leads by example. Lawson Krause feels like a guy that has no problem getting in someone's face. And that's just, again, what I could tell like from the outside. He could be a teddy bear
100%.
inside the locker room and I wouldn't know. I'd have no idea.
But that's based on what we see, outside. We know when he's talking of media to television people to when he's just like his overall demeanor on the ice. That's what you can guys get. You can get you could pretty get a decent grasp on how you think Lawson Krause might be in the locker room. Obviously, again, we can't make any confirmations. It's just all speculation. But I think that's like I said, I feel like someone should make the step up. I kind of think Lawson Krause would be one of those people. I think he should. But we are going to be getting out of time here pretty soon. So what we're going to do is we're going to talk about Jason Zucker. Is he going to be coming back? We're going to maybe let you guys know the timeline, as well as do just a quick at-a glance for the Yotes versus the Kraken that's coming up on Tuesday. So we'll get to all that coming up right after this.
We've got a word from FanDuel, sponsors on the show. Score early this NFL season with FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. Right now, new customers get $150 in bonus bets with any winning $5 moneyline bet. That's $150 if your team wins. If you've been thinking about joining FanDuel, there's no better time to get into the action. The app is easy to use, the wide range of betting options, including spreads, player props, over-unders, and more. So visit FanDuel.com/lockedon and kick off the NFL season. FanDuel, official partner of the NFL.
All right, so let's get back here on Locked On Coyotes. Once again, thanks everyone for making this show your first listen every day. We're free and available everywhere you get your podcast. Also, don't forget that you can tune into every Coyotes hometown broadcast on the Sirius XM app, or just on your Sirius XM in your car. All you gotta do, if you have the app, is just search up Coyotes. If you're in your car, you can easily just find the channel. If you don't know where it is, we'll let you guys know. But you can do that, as well as find our show on the Sirius XM radio app if you have it. But let's get back to the episode, Matthew. Enough of talking about what the Coyotes can do to get better. One thing that they have going for them is we're starting to understand the timeline, the potential timeline again. There could be setbacks or whatever it might be. But our understanding is Jason Zucker is set to return sometime in the next, anyway, let's say a week or two.
Yeah, Craig Morgan tweeting out a couple of days ago that he is expected to return to the lineup against Nashville on the 11th. And with how much energy he brought, especially in the offensive zone, and he was just starting to score when he gets that injury, the Coyotes can use that. And to be fair, it actually can tie slightly into that motor problem. I noticed Cooley has quite a bit of it, but also a slight hesitancy towards the shot. Jason Zucker had Cooley's energy, but also was shooting as much as possible. Maybe that's what they're fundamentally missing. Just that one energy guy to be the motor. And without that, it tends to, they get lost.
I mean, if you saw the way Jason Zucker started the season, everything seemed promising, right? After he got injured, I think that's when things started to kind of go down a little. I'm not saying he is cornerstone like that, but when you're like someone like him and you're playing the same line as the next prodigy kid, it is going to make a difference.
I think it's his motor made him serve as a glue guy. Like, the lineup did not completely combust after he left.
No.
But there has been, or after he was injured, he didn't leave. After he was injured, but it just, something about, again, the motor of the team feels a little different since then. It could be a correlation, not a causation. But it is something interesting to think about because I feel like they haven't had quite as much of that in the offensive aspect, despite still scoring pretty consistently. They're still above at 3 goals a game. But yeah, that could be part of the reason why that motor just isn't there. And when you get someone like that back in the lineup, it's definitely going to help. But it's also going to suck for like Travis Boyd because Carcone and Boyd have both been playing very well. Carcone better than Boyd.
Yeah.
So it really sucks when you have to kick someone out that is playing well. And even Liam O'Brien is playing well. So there isn't really like minus, Boyd was scratched before the injury. Minus that fact, there really isn't an easy person to point and just kick out of the lineup.
I love when we're talking about like issues like that where like players end up getting kicked out and you're like, I feel bad for these players because they're playing well.
Mm-hmm.
If we're talking about a team, this same team 2 years ago, we wouldn't be.
Travis Boyd was a first line center 2 years ago.
Exactly. That's what I'm getting at.
King Louis Erickson was the greatest meme to skate for the Coyotes 2 years ago.
But yeah, but it does make a difference. And one thing I absolutely love is, if he really is back for the game against Nashville, that kind of feels pretty awesome in the sense that you got a guy who's been pretty a positive aspect to the Arizona Coyotes coming back against a team that the Coyotes just for some reason love to terrorize. Like Nashville Predators fans, like I've heard like a lot of them talk about it before because I've done crossovers with Locked On Predators. I've just talked to Predators fans. They do not like the Coyotes, mainly because the Coyotes just have their number for some reason or another. And it's amazing. I love it. I think maybe having Zucker back just might make it a little more satisfying.
I'll keep the jokes to myself, but I imagine it's like me with the Stars. I will fully admit I despise the Dallas Stars, and the Coyotes just can never beat them, even when I think they're a better team than Dallas. Not currently. This current team is not better than Dallas. I'm talking about.
Oh no, this Dallas team is one of the best teams in the NHL right now,
and I hate it. I despise Dallas. You know what? You want a team to move to Houston? Move the Stars. You want a team that desperately in Houston? Take the Dallas team.
Keep them in the same state. Keep them in the same division. No issues.
Or, you could take the fake Jets and make them relocate to Houston if you want a team there so badly. But I guarantee the people that desperately want the Houston Aeros for some reason won't sacrifice the Jets.
Yeah, but, we still also need that team back in Atlanta. We also need a team in Salt Lake City.
I'm just saying, look, there are a couple of teams that are struggling with attendance this year. Move them to these markets that will magically sell out every night.
If only
for legal reasons, these are all just sarcasms.
Yeah. No, if it was like, imagine if it was easy as just relocation, right? Like,
oh man, a team's not drawing attendance because they're not very good this year. It's all right, San Jose, pack your bags. You're going to Utah.
Don't do that to me.
I know you had like a 15-year run of being a great organization, but you're not selling out 1 year. That means you have to leave.
I mean, you're not wrong now. This team no, honestly, it's a year like this in which I'm glad I'm a professional reporter covering the Coyotes because my childhood team is just not cutting it. But that's for another conversation. That's maybe for a month from now when they get close to playing against each other.
You see, you get the luxury of getting to choose between teams. I was born in this pain, and all of my teams constantly take out golf clubs and beat me.
Here's the thing: I don't necessarily choose because I moved here to Arizona, and then I started covering the Roadrunners because I wanted to cover hockey.
Right.
And I just ended it. So then that kind of translated to covering the Coyotes. Because I think when you cover the Roadrunners for 6 years, eventually a lot of those guys are going to come to Arizona, and here I am. I'm not saying I don't love it. I do. I love everything of this.
No, let me ask you this fundamental question. Okay, so if Craig is from Chicago, but he's been covering the Coyotes for 20 years, is he a Blackhawks fan?
Isn't he born
Does
a
he
Blackhawks
like
fan?
the Blackhawks?
I don't think anymore.
To my knowledge, no.
I think he's still actually in some bits a little bit. Like I think he's still got some connection to the team. And I'll be honest with you on this. I had like about before you. I think maybe even before Carl came on. I can't remember how long ago it was. I had Craig on this show, for an episode, and I was talking to him about Nicholas Hjalmarsson retiring, and I asked him about it, and he's like, "Well, yeah, because Hjalmarsson was also on the Blackhawks for a while, so I kind of got a chance to love him even more, and I as a player, and so that kind of answers it."
Nah, he hates the Blackhawks. I can confirm. My sources.
Well,
Trust me, bro.
I mean, look. A lot of people can be hating the Blackhawks right now. I mean, especially if you saw what's been going on in the organization. It happened again. That's all I'll say. It happened.
I hate almost all the teams equally. You know what's funny? You know what's funny actually? Before we're overtime, so I have to cut this short. It's funny. I hate the Kings like most good red-blooded Coyotes fans, but the Ducks I've just never hated. Yet the Ducks and Coyotes cannot stand each other.
Oh yeah, no, they hate the guts. I talked about it with Jason Hernandez, host of Locked On Ducks, and it's like it's like something that we can't explain. But when you watch them play on the ice, the Ducks and the Coyotes just cannot stand each other, and it makes for some interesting hockey. I kind of love watching it. It's just really interesting, you know. I think it just might be. Honestly, I think it might be the show offiness of Zegras, but
that's kind of where it started because there's I think Tocchet was still the coach that year, and they had like that big fight at the end of that game in Glendale.
I think Zegras tried to Michigan when it was already like 6-0, something like that.
But guess what? But I'm consistent. Okay, all right. If you're mad about goals when you're already down, how about you don't give up 6 goals to start with?
Facts.
If you're mad about, they're disrespecting us, why'd you give up so many goals then? You disrespected yourself. I remember I was on the Ducks side for that conflict because I was like, this is kind of stupid. And I still stand by that. It was a stupid conflict. Anyway, you know what?
Yeah. Anyways, we're out of time.
Go. All right, this is
we are out of time. And we didn't get a chance to get to our Yotes versus Kraken at a glance, but don't worry. Tune in tomorrow. We'll have our full Yotes versus Kraken previews episode. So you guys can tune into that, and then we'll also have a post-game show because why not? But for now, that's going to be it for today's episode of the Locked On Coyotes podcast. If you like what you heard, don't forget to leave a review, to like, comment, subscribe if you have yet to already. We're available everywhere you get your podcast, including on YouTube, on the Sirius XM radio app, and ad-free on Amazon Music. Don't forget to interact with us on social media, Facebook.com/LockedOnCoyotes, and on X at @LO_Coyotes. I'm personally at Robyn_Leon. Matthew Jacobson does not have an X profile. You can follow him on Threads, though, at AZ_sports_guy.
I love being a nobody on socials again. It's literally made me stop using social media.
Interact with us. Ask the question you might have. We might answer right back or in a future episode of the Locked On Coyotes podcast. Thanks again, everyone, for listening to today's episode. Hope you guys are staying safe out there. Hope you guys are staying healthy. And don't forget to howl on.